the studio is 11:34 right now. Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. here with you. Chase, I got new words for you on this song.
What's up?
When you add up all those numbers, that's the amount of draft picks Sam Hinkie will have next year.
It's all about assets. It's all about assets with Sam Hinkie right now.
It is, and it's all about analytics as well. Sam Hinkie makes some big trades at the deadlines. No more KJ McDaniels. And Michael Carter-Williams, see ya. You're out of town, the Rookie of the Year. And now joining us on the hotline is the birthday girl herself from Comcast SportsNet, and she does a phenomenal job covering the Sixers, and that's why we love to bring her on all the time, and that is Dei Lynam. Dei, happy birthday. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
Thanks so much. I love celebrating 29 year after year.
You're aging well.
I will have to ask you this, though. This was a team yesterday, the Sixers, where I understand they were looking a bit to be improving at some times, the play on the court. But we all know the big picture is Sam Hinkie wants to trade for some draft picks and improve this team for the long run with this whole tanking philosophy. With the moves they made yesterday, do you think it was a good move, a bad move, or are you so-so on it?
I mean, obviously you have to, wait and see what that becomes. I just came from Sam, saying the opportunity to have the Lakers pick, which is a first-round pick, was something he didn't think he could pass on. Now, me personally, I don't believe that pick comes to fruition this year. And actually, he was in, felt pretty strongly that's the case as well. So it's top 3 protected next year. But I'm saying, you don't know who the Lakers are. I mean, those people want to play there. That can easily, everybody says, well, it's only top 3 protected next year. But it could also be a number 15 pick. And my thing is, I know it's a point guard league. You're not having a point guard for the last 29 games. Trust me on that. You're going to have a D-League point guard for the end of the – I don't care what he says about Isaiah Cannon, but to me, it's you gave up a talent, and maybe he's not the top-shelf talent, but he's definitely second tier. And I know his shooting percentages is what people question, but he flirts with a triple-double, at least 50% of the time.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of Sam Hinkie, but I don't mind the move yesterday. I understand everything you're saying, and I agree. Michael Carter-Williams is not the best shooter. KJ McDaniels was gone most likely anyway after this year. But the big question that I wonder, because Philadelphia fans have absolutely zero patience, and this is really going to test their patience in the next few years, is when does some stability with Sam Hinkie and this program starts to happen? Does it come after this draft, or do we wait 2-3 more years? Because if they go through 3-4 more losing seasons, how much longer of a leash does this guy have?
Well, my thing would be, and I try to say that to him, you're going to put the ball in the hands of a rookie point guard for the second time in 3 years. I'm sorry, in a point guard-driven league where, you're running out against the Chris Pauls and the Kyle Lowrys and, Damian Lillard, whatever, name them. They're all upper echelon, and they're all veterans, and they all have a little something under their belt. And to keep running out a rookie guy, Michael paid the price for being a rookie in that position, and they played him 30-some minutes a game, and I think he benefited from it. But you didn't benefit in terms of the win column. So if you're going to try to sell me on that again, he could surprise me and do something he hasn't done and go out and get some veteran this year, which I don't see happening. But I agree with you. At what point do you say, I hear you when you say this is for the long time better. But when is the long time now?
Dei Lynam of Comcast SportsNet is our guest here on The Main Event on WHIP Radio here in Philadelphia, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station. Dei, I listened to Sam Hinkie's press conference this morning, and what kind of stood out to me is him saying that, look, I wish people could see the long hours that Brett Brown and I put in, where him and I are at the Wells Fargo Center talking for many hours after the games, but Brett Brown is now forced with having to coach basically a revolving door of of players, and now it looked like the nucleus was coming together. The Sixers were starting to play their best basketball. A lot of people said this roster couldn't even win 10 games. They've already eclipsed that. So how do you think Brett Brown is dealing with the influx of talent continuing to come in and that lack of stability that we talked about?
Well, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, he always definitely puts the franchise first, and that's the only thing I've ever seen of him for the 2 years he's been here. So we'll see at 5 o'clock. I did tell somebody earlier today, I mean, there have been 2 occasions this year that I felt that he did show emotion, that it wouldn't be his choice, but he understood business. Brandon Davies was one when they traded him, and the other was when Larry Drew got let go and he had no point guard. And, you know, they rolled in Tim Frazier, who they're going to roll in again tonight, and we'll start for them. So it will be interesting, because the only thing that's different for me in this scenario is the fact that you have no Tony Broughton and you traded away a Michael Carter-Williams. I mean, just to try to run a team without a point guard is an impossible scenario. It just doesn't happen. And I'm not saying Sam's minimizing what he has to now go through, meaning Brett, but 29 games, you're going to have, you know, less than what I would consider an NBA. I mean, I get that Sam likes Isaiah. He wanted to take him in the draft, and he could take him one spot ahead of where he would have selected him, but that's still a second-round pick. And as a starting point guard in this league, I just don't see replacing, you know, your reigning Rookie of the Year with D-League guys.
And for the remaining 29 games of the season, as we're talking to Dei Lynam of Comcast SportsNet, it's almost like they're trying to conduct business without a point guard, which is like playing football without a quarterback. But
it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, am I wrong in thinking that?
No, not at all. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it just, and I get, like, he sees a bigger future picture, but there are 29 games to be played.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the positions, that is the one. You don't have a backup guy right now. Tony Broughton is gone.
Yeah.
So this is like shuffling in nothing and then nothing behind nothing.
And this brings me to the point of the point guard being the vocal leader of this team and you being around that locker room all the time, Dee. To me, I'm a firm believer in the kinship, the harmony, the camaraderie, the continuity of a team being almost the most important thing other than the product on the floor. When these young players, which this is the youngest roster in the history of the National Basketball Association, when their friends are just being shipped out, and you see these players on Twitter reacting to these trades saying, I don't even know what's happening. How do they deal with this situation? This is crazy for them, given that they are inexperienced players in the NBA, and as soon as they start to gain relationships off the court, which is so vitally important for these guys, their best friends and teammates are shipped away.
I agree. I mean, that is part of the business when you sign up. So I always say to people, as much as you might dislike it, you know, it is part of the deal. But the flip side of that is, I think last year everybody expected that anybody who had been on the watch of the previous regime was susceptible to being shipped, traded, let go, whatever you want to say, Evans, Spencer, Lavoie, and eventually Thaddeus. I think this sends a different message to your locker room because they have preached that he was a cornerstone. And if you can ship a cornerstone, you know, somebody jokingly said to Noel before we knew Michael Carter-Williams had been shipped yesterday, did you pack a bag before you came to practice today? And he's like, are you crazy?
They put him on the graphic for the slogan of next year, saying it starts right now.
Together we tank.
Right? And my thing would be, like, I don't think if you're anybody in that locker room should you feel safe. It's just, it's a different mentality of how you build for the future. And I mean, they talk so much about development, and that was kind of what I was trying to get Sam to explain to me. You talk about development, but if you're not waiting to see or reap the benefits of your development, which I think those guys actually do really, really well, then I don't understand how we're supposed to understand the plan.
We're talking to Dei Lynam of Comcast SportsNet. And here's also another one flaw of the plan, because as you know, in the draft, it all comes down to the ping pong balls and which way they fall. What happens if the ping pong balls just don't fall the way for the 76ers over the next 2 years and they don't get where they expect to be in the draft?
Well, of course, that's part of
the risk.
Deal. I mean, this year, I don't think they'll be out of the top 4. And by all accounts, and believe me when I say I trust more on talking to people than I do watching, because I don't have the time to watch as much college basketball as I should, that I believe that if you're in the top 5 this year, you get a decent player. I think all of us would agree with that. Now, the franchise changing, I don't know about that, but you're going to get a player. And then, yeah, I agree with you. Like those other 4 picks that are in the first round this year, first of all, 2 of them I don't think are going to be yours because they're protected in a way that I don't think will fall in the Sixers' favor.
No question.
So they'll have their one other, in my opinion. And then next year, you might get 1 or 2 of those others, and they may be somewhere in the middle as opposed to where you think you were, spending that Michael Carter-Williams for a top 6 pick to be a 15 pick. That's what I think could happen next year.
If someone called up this show and said, I'm looking to get my son a jersey for the Sixers, I would say, I guess it would be Embiid. He's the safest bet to be here. But one player...
Embiid's your safest for 2 years.
Yeah. And the one guy I'm most intrigued to see what happens with, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier with Chase, is Nerlens Noel. Are they happy with Noel's production on the court right now? Because if they get
I think they are, but I think he becomes like the prototypical of what they know they can shift. I think to other teams, he's not a person that you ship by himself, but he becomes a perfect asset to put in a deal because he's a rim protector. He does all the things defensively that don't super stand out on a stat sheet per se, but he's a good defensive guy.
Dei Lynam of Comcast SportsNet is our guest. We're trying to make sense of this trading frenzy that the Sixers went on yesterday. And Dei, I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm a firm believer in Sam Hinkie's plan. I do trust the process. I think that part of the rebuilding process requires and exercises some patience, but I got to hit you up on some questions about the on-basketball product because that's what you do too.
Who gives a crap about that?
I think it's absolutely ludicrous that people are ripping into Nerlens Noel saying that he's been a bust so far when he's
I would totally disagree. I think he never was an offensive-minded guy.
Yeah.
Didn't have those skills, wasn't necessarily needed to have those skills at Kentucky. And the fact that he gives you 9 points a game, to me, is actually a bonus.
Yeah.
I think 9 has been above what I thought he would give you. I thought he was like a 5-point guy.
Uh-huh.
Month of January, he gave you 2.2 blocks, 1.7 steals.
Yeah.
And I think
unheard of for a big man.
Rebounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, he's not a bust. Are you kidding me? And the fact that he's been on the court they've played 53 games. He's played 49. Mm-hmm. And I think most of us looked at him in terms of his weight and coming off of knee surgery and said, no way will this guy, play the bulk of an 82-game season. And the fact that he's been out there for 49, I give him kudos to that.
Yeah, and that's what we get, I guess, for working in the city of Philadelphia with the sports fans that can overreact sometimes. And yeah. I compare him to Joakim Noah. I mean, he's 20 years old. He's a great defensive player. His offensive game is obviously going to develop. And it's all about the upside with me. And when I look at Nerlens Noel, he has a lot of upside. Another guy that has upside that we mentioned in this interview briefly was Joel Embiid. He's ramped up his physical activity. Brett Brown said the other week he could be one of the best shooters on the Sixers team. I know you don't really get to talk to him much because he is injured. He doesn't have much media availability. But from what you've seen, what have you seen out of Joel Embiid?
One, I would say that and I did ask Brett this yesterday because, Brett, if you would say, career best fitness or skin fold, because those are all things they measure, I said, where
and their
would
sleep.
Where would he be? And he would be at his best since he's been drafted. So, and I would say that you could see that just when you walk in the gym. He just looks in shape. And he's a big man. So, like, in shape and whatever that weight number is are separate to me because, he's 7 feet tall. I would love if they ran him out in April. It really would go against the grain of what they think. I know that. But I can just see in his one-on-one workout stuff that he is chomping at the bit beyond belief. And because he is of the physical specimen that he is, I actually would be more willing to do it than I would have been with Noel last year because Noel's just going to get physically beat up by people. You know what I mean? And so there was no gain there. But whatever Joel can or can't do as a rookie in whatever time they give him, he's not going to get beat up by anybody because he's 7 feet, he's strong, and he's capable. So whatever his skills are that need to be developed, he's not going to embarrass.
Dee, I know you have a lot of work to get to, but you talk about Joel Embiid chomping at the bit to get on the floor. Is that why you think he got a little bit frustrated with the strength and conditioning coach, and that's why he was sent home from that West Coast trip?
I actually think that, he was definitely frustrated. And keep in mind, this is a guy who, I talked to him after he was drafted, and if he had his brothers, he would love to still be a college student. He really would. He loved the college life. He loved being at Kansas. He loved playing at Allen Fieldhouse. He loved the whole experience. But, life calls for you to do what you do, and financially you can't pass up on where he was slotted, drafted. And then, he has these injuries that happen. So I think his frustrations were kind of mounted, and then his brother died, and his parents are back there by themselves. He can't play. He realizes that, all of this is supposed to be grand, but it's not grand per se. You get a check, but it still doesn't change life. So I do believe, yes, all of that added to his frustrations, but I think just him over the last maybe 4 weeks, I can tell that he looks motivated. He obviously is allowed to do more than they let us see, but I can tell because his body wouldn't have changed the way it has changed if he wasn't doing something different, and he clearly is. I got to think that's playing some one-on-one at some point. I don't know.
Dei Lynam, before we let you run, don't let Sam Hinkie get by those birthday candles tonight, because I'm sure if he would trade those candles for some draft picks, he would do that.
Second
he would
rounders.
trade me. Are you kidding? I'm out.
I would hope not, because you were excellent today, and we appreciate the time. Thanks so much, Dei.
So fun talking to you guys. See ya.
There's Dei Lynam joining us right now from Comcast SportsNet. I don't like Sam Hinkie. I just don't.
I do. I think he's a very brilliant guy. Like I said to Dee, I think the rebuilding process requires these fans, which don't have patience, to exercise patience. I don't like the thought of not having much stability in this franchise, because when you're trying to rebuild, I think that is ever so important to have some stability. But I've always trusted Sam Hinkie. I've always read into his plan. I bought into the process, and I will continue to do so. But if it does not work out, this could be an epic failure, and one of the biggest failures in sports. There's no other way to put it.
Let me ask you this. Gun to your head, yes or no? Sam Hinkie's plan would work out. What is your answer?
I think it does.
I'm going to say no. That's why
does.
Sports Talk is great, because you can have people disagreeing with people, but I think the fans' patience are eventually going to run out in this town.
We're still
and you will
1.5 seasons through the rebuilding plan. You know? It's 1.5 seasons through the rebuilding plan. Now, I thought that and I still do think that the Sixers could be knocking on the door of a 7 or 8 seed next year, and then 2 years from now, that's when they really start to make some progress.
Starting at point guard tonight for your 76ers, 6'2" from Temple University. He does a talk show on WHIP radio in Philadelphia. He is, I have a nice three-point shot better than most of these Sixers, Chase Sr.
I wish I was 6'2".
At shooting guard. He's a motley 5'8", probably 225. He does the updates on WHIP. He told me he weighs more than 225. Tom Henslin. And here's the fans' reactions. Boo!
Because it's a garbage product.
How about you
garbage.
at power forward?
At power forward, standing in at 6'4", weighing in more than you, from the University of Temple. He had 3 years of college under his belt before he left his senior year. Zachary Lazarus Gelb.
Hey,
That could be a starting lineup tonight for your Sixers.
Brett Brown has done a tremendous job of developing these
That's
players.
the worst job in the league,
And
Brett Brown.
I think the nucleus.
I feel bad for him.
Well, he wouldn't have taken it if they didn't give him a 5-year deal. So he wants to be here in the long term. He's developed these players. I think he's going to continue to develop these players. And when you have an organization in the hands of Brett Brown and Sam Hinkie and the brilliant thought process that they're going through right now, they are bright minds, okay? Anytime you listen to those two guys talk, you will listen, you will learn about the front office part of basketball and the on-court product of basketball.
You want to know...
I trust it. I trust the process. I just don't know why Sam Hinkie is trading away some of these assets.
You want to know who is the biggest loser at the station is? The guy that's the biggest loser. It's Greg Frank, because he walks into the studio today all giddy like he won an NBA championship. The only thing guaranteed for the rest of this process
My
so
man's
far
wearing a Sixers
is
hoodie
losing
and a
this
Sixers
year.
beanie.
He is a loser.
I appreciate the support of the 76ers, Greg Frank.
It's called
And Greg
false
Frank...
hope.
Here's the thing.
But the
Greg
Snapchat
Frank
game's got to improve
needs
like
to
the Sixers.
represent the city of Philadelphia better, because the people in this city aren't losers, and Greg Frank is a loser. That's what he is.
His Snapchat is in the red numbers.
It's awful. It's pathetic. Sam Hinkie wouldn't even trade for him. He wouldn't even take a second rounder for Greg Frank, and he takes everyone.
His Snapchat stock is plummeting.
Loser.
It's a modern marvel, I have to be honest.
He's a loser. That's what he is. Because he walks in today like he's ready to go down a parade like the Sixers just won a championship.
Still a lot of
What
work
does
to
this
do.
guarantee them?
He said
Nothing.
He feels good. He said he can't wait to do the show in a few minutes.
Good for him.
Again,
Temple Sports Hour's coming up
I'll
next.
stand by my thoughts. I do believe in the process, and I like what the Sixers are doing. Literally, the only thing that I'm confused about is the stability aspect of this organization. When is it going to come? That is my thought process.
I want to see the stability. And right now, I can't tell you if the stability's coming next year or the year after that. So enjoy to keep on losing. Because that's what you're doing right now, Greg Frank, you loser.
Look what we got all around here. I don't know what to do with myself. I guess this is what I get for going to a diverse university. I got Zach wearing a Patriots hat.
That's a winner.
John Cole wearing an Eagles sweatshirt.
Well, John Cole's
We
a
got
loser.
Ed LaFerge wearing a Yankees sweatshirt, and Greg Frank supporting the Sixers.
Okay.
What am I doing here?
11:58 is in the studio. It's a fun week of programming. We'd like to thank Evan Roberts and Dei Lynam for joining us today. The Temple Sports Hour is coming up next, so make sure you tune in for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. We got to get on out of here. For Tom Henslin, Chase Sr., I'm Zach Gelb. Peace!